Hi guys! So we're back for another day of reviewing our fraction things, and today we're going to talk about naming and building fractions, okay? So first of all, let's talk about naming fractions. And whenever we name fractions, we say the numerator just as our regular number, 4, 8, 2, 7, but it's our bottom number that we kind of say differently when we're naming them. So if my denominator is a 2, I would say half or halves. Okay, so I would say 1/2 or 2 halves. If my denominator is a 3, then I would say third, 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, depending on what my numerator is. If my denominator is a 4, then I would say fourths. Okay, it's got kind of a THS on the end. So 2/4 or 3/4, depending on my numerator. If I have a 5, then I would say fifths. It's a little hard to say. So 1/5 or maybe 4/5. If my denominator is a 6, I would say sixths. That is hard to say, isn't it? Sixths. All right, if it's a 7, I would say sevenths, 3/7. And 8 is eighths. And then so on, okay? So that's kind of how we read and name fractions. So if I have a fraction that has 4 parts and I colored 3 of them, I would read that fraction as 3/4. That's how I would name it. Okay, so let's talk about building some fractions. If you do not have something to write with, like pencil or paper or your whiteboard, I want you to pause the video, go grab it, and then come back and hit play. Okay, so once you have something to write with, here's what we're going to do. We are going to practice building some fractions. So I'm going to give you a fraction here, and then you're going to try to build it or draw it or represent it on your paper at home. So for example, if I give you the fraction 1/3, okay, now our answers will vary here. What I write on the board might not be exactly what you have at home. But if I give you the fraction 1/3, I want you to take something and illustrate that. I want you to build me that fraction. So maybe you're going to cut a shape into 3 parts and color one of them. Or maybe you're going to make a set. And 1/3 of my set is blue. Okay? And answers, like I said, could be totally different. Maybe you drew a rectangle and divided it into thirds that way. There will be different answers, but when we check it, we'll talk about it, and you can tell if you were right. So you ready? All right. The first fraction that I'd like for you to build is 3/5. Okay, you can pause the video, draw your fraction, represent it, and build it, and then hit play to come back to check. Okay, so 3/5. So when we go over the answer, I'm going to kind of show you it as a whole and as part of a set. So if you drew 3/5 as part of a set, or I'm sorry, as part of a whole, if you drew it as part of a whole, that means that you drew one shape, you cut it into 5 parts, and then how many of those parts did you shade? 3. Good. If you drew it as part of a set, it might look like this. You would have 3 of one color and 2 of another to give you 5, and then 3/5 of that shape would be blue. So, did you get it? Good. Let's try another. All right, can you draw or build me the fraction 2/4? hit pause, draw your shape, and then come back to check. Okay, what did you draw? It could have been maybe a circle that you cut into 4 parts. And how many of those parts would you shade? 2. Or maybe you drew triangles, okay? And 2 of your triangles were one color and 2 of them were another color. Good, all right. Here we go, let's try another. How about 1/2? Can you draw 1/2? Good, okay, so maybe you drew a square and you cut it in half and colored one of them. Or maybe you have 2 shapes and one of them is a star. So 1/2 of your shapes is a star. Good, okay. Let's try one more. This one might trick you a little bit. Can you draw and represent me the fraction of 4/4? Hit pause, draw it, and then come back to check. Okay, so 4/4, what'd you draw? Okay, you drew a shape, you cut it into 4 parts. And then if you colored all 4 of them, you colored what? The whole shape. So that means you have one whole shape colored. I want you to remember that. That's a really important detail. Anytime that our numerator and our denominator are the same, it is equal to 1, because that means we have one whole entire shape colored. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later, but I wanted to point it out to you now just to get your brain jogging. Okay, so today you're gonna log on to iReady. You have a lesson that goes along with this and then a quiz for you to do after.